welcome back to the Far From Center podcast. I am your host, Robert Patrick Lewis, and I thank you for joining us today. We've got an episode here that I think you're going to be pretty excited about. I know I am. I've got guest Michael Jaye today, and he's going to tell you some things that are going to challenge the conventional teachings and ideas that you've been taught about the formation and the history of our world, mainly concerning our planet. So I'm not going to talk that long because this is something that I thought was really cool. A friend of mine actually turned me on to this guy and got us in contact. So I know a lot of our friends and listeners listen to other podcasts. I know Rogan, we have a lot of fans of the Joe Rogan podcast and some other ones. And so if you have any guests that you really like, that you'd really like to hear, that you think I should have on with just the way that I approach things and you know the kind of stuff that I'm interested to by this point, leave us a message. Go ahead and hit us up on the Facebook page or the farfromcenter.com website. I got a lot of ideas. Thankfully, we've got quite a few guests lined up, but I'm always looking for new, cool things that I may not have seen before. So if you got an idea, go ahead and hit us up. Also, since this is a pretty long interview, we taped it yesterday morning, and it went a little long. So we're going to change up the format a little bit. The song is going to be after the interview. Just so that we can go ahead and get to it as quickly as we can. We're going to have Blind by Mike Amabile and Run Over Twice for this episode, so make sure you stay listening for that, the USA Cares Minute, and you'll enjoy the whole package. I'd like to say thanks again to everybody for clicking through farfromcenter.com. We've had a lot of people that are going to Audible and getting a $7.49 membership. Again, you click through the banner on the Support the Show or the free Audible audiobook, and it'll take you to Audible. $7.49 gets you a year-long membership and 3 free audiobooks, and a lot of people have been choosing Love Me When I'm Gone as one of their free books. Now, Love Me When I'm Gone was the book that I wrote, and I also narrated, and Mike Dawson also did all the audio engineering. It's getting great reviews. It's flying off the shelves on both iTunes and Amazon, and by doing it that way, clicking through the farfromcenter.com website and clicking on that Audible banner there, you're not only supporting me, and I don't put it out there that much, but I'm taking the profits from this book and giving it to a lot of different various charities. You know that I work with various veterans charities. You guys that listen to this know that I support USA Cares quite a bit. I'm actually going to play in a golf tournament with them next week and speaking at a conference with them next week, and then in May in Vegas. I support them very much, but I'm also using the profits from the book to financially help them and some other veterans charities, because that's what I want to do. This book wasn't meant to make money. I put this book out there to affiliate and help some other veterans charities as much as I could, and also get the story out there. And I've been getting a lot of reviews, and I've been getting hit up on Twitter and Facebook and a lot of other places by veterans and their families and their loved ones and other people that just have been connecting with the story. I've had a lot of vets say, "Hey man, thanks for going out there, because you've got you're going through the same things I went through, or the story really connected with me or whatever." And that's the whole reason I wrote the book. We actually just sent the proposal for my next book, and then there's another proposal for book number 3 that I'm about halfway done with now, off to publishers. So those ones will be for money. This first one was all just for getting the message out there, getting the story out there, and being able to do whatever I could for various veterans charities. So it's working out well. I'm glad it is. Thank you so much to everybody who's doing that. Again, I narrated that audiobook myself, and the hardest working man in entertainment, Mike Dawson, did all the audio, so it's quality. So that's great. I hate the sound of my own voice, but I guess you guys don't mind it that much. So thanks for listening. So I'm just going to talk for a little bit on this one. I know I have a tendency to get a little long-winded, but there's something I really want to talk about really quick, and it's the definition of esoteric. So everybody that listens to this show knows that I'm a Freemason. So while I was researching Freemasonry and considering going into it and starting that whole journey, I saw the term esoteric quite a bit, and I didn't really know what it meant. I really just thought esoteric meant you're off into some left field shit. I really just thought that that's what it meant. I had no clue what it was. But I've been taking these classes, like Skype classes, and our proctor actually went out and defined it during our class last week, and I really want to put it out there for anybody else who might be interested and explain some other things. I also watched History's Mysteries last night, which is I think a history program, a History Channel program. I was watching on Netflix, so you don't know what network anything's on anymore, but it was really cool. But I've noticed, I think that the term secret society and esoteric both have a very negative connotation to them now, just because of the way that we are. There's guys like David Icke out there, and I actually like Alex Jones quite a bit, but these people have a tendency to lump Freemasons and Illuminati and all these other kind of secret societies into the same pile, and anybody who knows anything actually about them knows they don't really belong in the same pile. But a lot of this stuff has a negative connotation. I'd like to just go through and kind of explain and define what it is, at least by my teacher's definition. So when we were in this class, he said there's two different types when you're looking at religion or spirituality, and I think it can go on beyond religion and spirituality, but we'll define it within the confines of that right now. So there's exoteric and esoteric, which are the two definitions of a person that's seeking spirituality or religion. So the exoteric is for the faithful. So basically the people that are sitting in the pews, the people that go to church every week and are just taking it all on blind faith. And that's great. More power to you. I think that's amazing because you got to believe in something, right? And every time I think about these, I get this image of Richard Pryor. There's a movie called Car Wash in the 70s, and there's this scene where Richard Pryor comes in, and I don't know what he is, like a televangelist or something, but he's got all these gorgeous, scantily clad, hot women around him singing, "You gotta believe something, why not believe in me?" And I'm a horrible singer. But it's been sampled a dozen times since then. I know Ice Cube and I think Dr. Dre sampled it for some of their songs. But it really is. He's basically like a televangelist, and that's, I think, what televangelists prey on. And I know there are some out there that are good guys, but there have been a lot that have been found to be nothing more than crooks and con artists. And unfortunately, that's what they prey on. They prey on people's blind faith, and they pray that you just take it on faith that they're good people and that their message is good. Now, unfortunately, you can have a good message, and bad people can take it and use it to their advantage, which is what some of these do. And that's a really long-winded explanation for exoteric. Sorry, I got a little too long-winded there. Esoteric is more inward. So exo is outward, just like an exoskeleton. Eso is inward. So esoteric is more of an inward spiritual search for the initiate who wants to learn more. So basically, that just means it doesn't mean you're not faithful. You are still faithful, but you're a person who looks for more concrete knowledge than just blind faith. And this is a very interesting thing that I found throughout my studies. And most people didn't know this because I never knew this growing up in Sunday school. I never learned it in church, whether it be a Southern Baptist or Catholic or anything. But a lot of religious texts were actually written with multiple gospels. And there was one for the clergy and one for the initiates. One for the clergy and the initiates and another for the faithful. So even when you get into religious texts, a lot of the Bible, there were Gospels that were written for the exoteric, for those people who would just wanted to read it in a Bible in the back of the pew. And there was another gospel that was written for the esoteric, for the clergy, for the people that needed to know a lot behind the scenes and a lot of the symbology and things like that. And when you get into the symbology, it's very interesting because growing up, I read the Bible. I was in Sunday school. Did vacation Bible study and YMCA summer camp and a lot of various Christian things. And I had always read the Bible as a story, allegory, as here is what happened. Since I've been on my journey of Freemasonry, even before I became a Freemason, but in my own crazy studies because I just got to know. I'm in the ever going search for knowledge. I want to know knowledge. I want to know the truth. I want to know everything about everything. So in these studies, I found a lot of different esoteric ideas about numerology and allegory and different things. And I've done more research beyond what I was taught as a kid. I've looked into other religions. I've looked into ancient mysticism, ancient Egyptian religion, and even pre-Christ Christianity, Gnosticism, things like that. And that's another thing. There was an entire Gnostic gospel that was written. The Catholic Church did everything they could to take it out, burned the people at the stake that followed it. And so Gnosticism, which is this idea that Jesus was actually a human, was burned. The people that were promoting it were burned at the stake as heretics. So Gnosticism went underground for a long time, and now it's starting to kind of resurface again. But that's one of the big things. It's just this hidden knowledge. And so as I started along this path of Freemasonry and other things, I've been hearing more and more and reading more and more and seeing more and more about this hidden knowledge. And it's interesting because the more you look, the more you study, the more you pull that thread, the more you see it, and the more you find that it's hidden in plain sight. And it's funny because there really is an underlying theme. If you look amongst all these different religions and all these different religious texts, you can really start to see that. You see that the one that's written for the exoteric and the one that's written for the esoteric. And we start knowing just a little bit about numerology and, sacred geometry and hidden knowledge and secret knowledge. It's interesting. If you read the book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, it's actually the book that Dan Brown wrote, based his Angels and Demons and his whole series and became a millionaire off of. And the Holy Blood, Holy Grail authors are suing Dan Brown, or did sue Dan Brown or whatever, because he took all of their ideas and popularized it. But these were two mathematicians that took all of these paintings and, works by the greats, by Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all the greatest artists of their time and everybody else, and put these secret math and secret hidden geometry and numerology and all these different things in their paintings. And it's something that's become more of like a public knowledge now. But Holy Blood, Holy Grail actually breaks it down, and they put all these paintings together and all this architecture and things like that and form a map, which they contest at the end of their book led them to the final resting place of Jesus, because it's their contention that Jesus was a human. He may have been a prophet, but it's their contention he was a human, and he was actually buried. And then there's all these other beliefs that that's the Holy Grail is his actual bloodline, and the Knights Templar were created to protect that. I don't know. You can believe it, not believe it, whatever. There is no definitive evidence that I've seen either way so far yet. But where I got off on that little tangent was that it's interesting for me to have the knowledge and have researched the things that I've researched now and read the Bible now as an adult, having seen all this knowledge, and to be able to go through it and see the numerology that's hidden there in plain sight. But as a kid, as an exoteric believer who would have never researched anything else and just reads that as a story, as allegory, and just as a true historical depiction of something that happened, I see a completely different side of it now. Now, in no way does it take away from my from my faith. I still don't even know what you would call me, but my ideas about Christianity. It in no way changes that. It's just interesting for me to see that. And I think it maybe even adds to it, because it lets me believe there's something there that I never saw in the past, and maybe that's what I was missing. I don't know. As I've said before, I'm still kind of working on what exactly my religious views are. I still think, as I've always said, I still think religion is great. I think people need it. I just think organized religion can be bad, and I don't necessarily believe in one or the other. I believe in more of spirituality, but I think the backbone of religion gives you a good foundation, and I think a lot of people do need it. I think a lot of people really need that foundation to keep them whole, and they need that idea that at the end of their life, they're going to have to answer for what they've done, because there are a lot of people that if you don't have that idea that one day you're going to have to answer for what you did and somebody's going to have a record book at the gates of heaven, there are a lot of people that will just go off the reservation, man, and they'll just spend the rest of their lives in Vegas, leaving Las Vegas. They'll just basically live like that. But speaking of the Richard Pryor thing, and that little movie clip that comes up in the back of my head whenever I think of these ideals, I've said before, and all my friends know, that I don't believe in coincidence. I very steadfastly do not believe in coincidence. I think there's too many things out there, too many variables throughout the universe for there to ever really be coincidence. I think everything happens for some reason, but I don't think it's ever because of coincidence. But I just wanted to bring up one thing. So there's this idea of exoteric and esoteric, and one of the esoteric ideologies is that possibly we are all connected, that there is a universal consciousness. If you listen to episode 4 with Jeannie talking about Reiki healing and all the other vibrational energy and universal consciousness and things that we went over there, you'll find that's what I believe in. And these famous Freemason segments that we do every week, I do with Robert Johnson. Brother Robert Johnson and I speak quite a bit offline about a lot of different things, but we never discuss the topics of the upcoming show. He has his own podcast, the Whence Came You podcast. You can download it on iTunes, get it for Android or iPhone. He has his own app. They have their own Facebook page. They have their own website. They also have the Midnight Freemasons blog, which is amazing. He's a contributor and the editor. So make sure you go check all those out. But we talk about a lot of things in Freemasonry, a lot of esoteric ideas, but we never talk about what segment is coming up or what the next Far From Center podcast is going to be about. He tapes the Whence Came You podcast, and after that, he tapes a Famous Freemason segment for us, and then he emails it to me. Well, The last two, completely unbeknownst to him, he had no idea what I was going to be covering on the show. So the last one, I announced that I'm going to go do a charity golf tournament next week with USA Cares. He had no idea about that. I didn't tell him anything about it. I hadn't announced it, and I hadn't put it out anywhere. Who did he send me for the Famous Freemason last week? Arnold Palmer. So this week, I didn't tell him anything about what I was going to cover with this. Nobody else in the world knows that every time I think about exoteric and esoteric, I think of this Richard Pryor clip from Car Wash. I don't think I've got to be the only person in the world crazy enough for that to be the image that I get. Yet, do you know who this week's Famous Freemason is? Richard Pryor. So, again, for a guy that doesn't believe in coincidence, last week I went, wow, that's pretty cool. This week, oh man, that's a little nuts. And I don't even know what the topic is going to be for next week's Far From Center podcast yet, but I'm kind of, I don't know, part of me wants to see what he sends first just so I can go, wow, that's what I would have done. But I don't know. And it's very interesting. So while we're on that subject, and while I'm trying to make this fast, we might as well get right into it. So we're going to go into this week's Famous Freemason from Brother Robert Johnson. And as I said earlier, it's going to be Brother Richard Pryor, which I think is pretty awesome. Now, before I get into that, I want to say a really quick word about On It. Again, I love this stuff. There are a lot of people out there that don't have time to eat right, that don't really have the ability to eat right, that you've got such a busy schedule. I know, like, if you're like me, I'm so sick of seeing fitness gurus and hearing them on the radio and seeing all these things where they just say, oh, well, it's just so easy. You just got to eat nutritious and do all these things. Well, you know what? I'm like most of you. I commute quite a bit to work. I got 2 kids. Like, I'm at work most of the day. I go to the gym every morning, but I got to wake up at 0:30 to do it. And sometimes there just isn't enough time in there to have a healthy meal. And that's the great thing about this new product from On It, the Hemp Force Protein. They actually have protein bars now. Mike Dawson got onto it last week, and he was telling me he loves this stuff because he doesn't have time. He never eats breakfast because he doesn't have time. But now he's been throwing a Hemp Force Protein shake into his daily regimen, and it's making him feel so much better. And that's great. I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, do you really like this stuff? What do you think about it? Well, I was using this stuff for quite a while before they became a sponsor. And that's it. It only became a sponsor because I was so in tune with them already. And we started talking after I did Corolla. But I really do love this stuff. I do. And I'm a big fan of it. I can't say enough good things about it. The Alpha Brain really does supercharge your brain. It helps you if you know what lucid dreaming is. If you're listening to this podcast, I'd assume you probably do kind of know what that is. It really helps with that. It makes your day amazing. It makes your nights amazing. It makes your brain, it takes it to a whole nother level that like nothing I've ever seen. New Mood, like I said, I've said it on here before. I said it on a lot of the other podcasts that I've done. After I got done with my first Comet deployment, I had a lot of trouble sleeping, and I didn't sleep for like 5 years after I left the Army. New Mood, I've only been taking for the last few months, and I actually get full, lucid, restful sleep again without all the other crap I used to have to take, melatonin and Benadryl and ZMA and drink a couple glasses of bourbon before bed. No more. New Mood. All natural. Unbelievable. It's the best thing in the world. You wake up relaxed. I think there is some kind of combination between the New Mood and the Alpha Brain that just, I don't know, man. It takes your body to a whole new level. I feel so much better. I perform so much better. You know, the Hemp Force Protein after the gym, it tastes great. Mixes better than anything I ever got from GNC, and it tastes better. So love that stuff. Use that checkout code RPL. You'll get 10% off, and they'll send a little bit of love to this show. And again, you got nothing to lose. If you're not satisfied with the product, you get all of your money back, and you get to keep the product. What is there to lose? So you can click through the banners on farfromcenter.com, or you can use that checkout code RPL and get yourself 10% off. Throw a little bit of love to our show and make yourself a better human being with some of these great products they got from On It. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get off my soapbox. I'm going to shut my mouth because we got a great interview here coming up. Got a great segment from Brother Robert Johnson. So take it away, Brother Robert Johnson. Tell us a little bit about Brother Richard Pryor.
Hey everyone, Brother Robert Johnson here from the podcast Whence Came You and managing editor of the Midnight Freemasons website, bringing you this week's Famous Freemason. Few comedians break barriers and span the gamut, but on December 1st, 1940, a brother was born that did just that. His examinations of racism, drugs, and life in general brought laughter to millions. Bob Newhart called him the seminal comedian of the last 50 years. Sadly, Brother Richard Pryor passed away a few years back. Brother Pryor was a recipient of an Emmy Award, several Grammys, 2 Academy of Humor Awards, the Writers Guild of America Award, and the first ever Kennedy Center Mark Twain Prize for American Humor was presented to him in 1998. Pryor is listed as the #1 comedian on Comedy Central's list of the all-time great stand-up comics. He was a veteran of 40 films between 1967 and 1991. Pryor suffered a mild heart attack in November 1977. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1986. In 1990, Pryor suffered a second and more severe heart attack and underwent a triple heart bypass surgery. By the early 1990s, he was confined to using a wheelchair as well as a motor-powered scooter for the remainder of his life to get around when his multiple sclerosis began to take its toll on his body. Pryor was posthumously awarded the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2006. The animal rights organization PETA gives out an award in Pryor's name to people who have done outstanding work to alleviate animal suffering. Pryor was active in animal rights and was deeply concerned about the plight of elephants in circuses and zoos. He was a member of Henry Brown Lodge No. 22 in Peoria, Illinois, Prince Hall affiliate F and AM, Illinois.
Okay, thank you again, as always, Brother Robert Johnson, for that great segment. Again, you can check him out at the Whence Came You podcast. Download for your Android or your iPhone. They have their own apps. You can get them on their Facebook page for the Whence Came You podcast, and also at Whence Came You, their website, whencecameyou.com, I believe. Now, there's something else I want to talk about really quick before we get into this this interview, and it's about the Sirius film. I know some of my listeners also listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. I heard Dr. David Greer, Dr. David Greer, a month or so ago, talking about the Sirius Disclosure Project. Lots of stuff behind him. I know my Rogan fans will know about that. For those of you that don't, check it out. Google it. Sirius Disclosure Project. Lots of great stuff. They have a film that's actually coming out here this week, and I've been in contact with the guys from the production company, and I was going to go. I really wanted to go. They're doing their first show, their premiere here in Los Angeles. But unfortunately, we waited a little bit too long to get our tickets. And now the great thing is they're also having a live stream. So there's a link on their website that you can subscribe and get the live stream. So even though you can't be at the premiere, you can click on that link and watch it from home. Even better, you don't have to deal with other people. So I know I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to put links on the farfromcenter.com website for this page to do that. I hope you check it out. If you like this podcast, then you'll probably be interested in this kind of stuff. They've got... I'm not even going to go into it because I don't have the time. I could take an hour and just talk about the great stuff with this, but proof of aliens. I'll just put it that way. And proof, they've got a body. Like, they've got some amazing stuff. They have 4-star generals from militaries around the world, including the U.S. They've got astronauts. They've got all of these great interviews of people that are finally coming out and saying, yeah, they exist. And that's the funny thing. The rest of the world, the militaries and the rest of the world have come out and said, yeah, they've disclosed all their UFO files. The United States is the only one that hasn't. But people are sick of our government not being straightforward about it. So yeah, you can think I'm a kook for saying it, but check it out. I mean, there's some pretty straight up individuals. You know, these aren't kooks living in mom and dad's basement. These are 4-star generals and politicians and a lot of bigwigs that are finally coming out and saying, yeah, we this has been going on. So go check that out. Click the links on farfromcenter.com and we'll lead you to that. So again, I'm going to shut up. Here's the interview with Michael Jaye, and they're going to go right into Blind by Mike Amabile and run over twice after the interview. And I think, you know, with the first lyrics of that song being "Open Your Eyes," it's great because this is amazing. Michael Jaye, I said it a few times. This is why I started getting into podcasts. So I love it. Again, I say it throughout the interview, but there are 2 PowerPoints that will be on the farfromcenter.com website for this episode. Check them out. If you're listening to this in the car or at work, go ahead and listen. When you get home, go to the website, check out those PowerPoints because you can hear it, and that's one thing. But to look at the PowerPoints and the screenshots and the stuff that he has, it's going to blow your mind, man. I hope you took your alpha brain for this one, son. All right, so have a good one. Enjoy the interview. Here we go with Michael Jaye. Okay, so here we are in the studio. We are sitting down with Michael Jaye. Like I said earlier, he's got some extremely interesting and informative ideas and theories about some things that you may have never heard of and you may have heard other theories about. But the great thing about this is he has a lot of great information, wildly intelligent guy, and he's got some great evidence behind his theories. So here we are with Michael. Welcome to the program, Michael. And can you please introduce yourself and just explain a little bit about yourself and who you are, and then we'll get into these ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Michael Jaye. I'm a father of four. I was in the Army for a little bit over 28 years. I'm retired, and I've been in the education field for probably about the last 20 years. Okay,
and so the two theories that we're going to go over today. And by the way, for anybody that wants to follow along with this, there are a lot of great graphics and visuals that Michael offers as evidence for these. So we're looking over simultaneous impacts theory and Comet impact discussion file. They will both be on the farfromcentered.com website. If you go under this episode, I'll have them in the media file so that if you want to, if you hear this on the way to work or at work, and you want to look at it again when you get home, and you can kind of follow along with us where we're going, those will be the two PowerPoints that will be on the website, because there's a lot of great information in here, and I don't want you guys to miss out. There's going to be a lot you can listen and follow along, but like me, I'm a visual learner, so if you want to be able to see some of this, I just want to let you know they will be up on the website. Okay, Michael, so we'll start off with simultaneous impacts theory. Should we start off with where did it come from, or how'd you come about with this theory?
Maybe how it came about.
Okay.
So I have a son who is in college, and he's in his senior year, last semester, and he's taking one class. And so his best friend and he decided that they're going to go down to South America. And while he's down there, he calls me from Argentina and says, "Hey, Dan, I want to touch the 7 continents." And so I think, oh my gosh, what's this going to cost me? He wants to go to Antarctica. So I turn on Google Maps. I was in the kitchen. I turned on the computer. I went to Google Maps, and I want to find the distance from the southern tip of South America to the northern tip of Antarctica. You kind of picture that in your head, how that topography has that little, it's an easterly bend to it. And so I want to know what's that distance, because the cost is going to be a function of distance, and it's 500 miles. And there's no airport down there. So I said, "Matthew, great, son, but I'm not going to pay for this. You're going to do this on your own time." So I hung up the phone, and I started investigating. So I'm on the Google Earth or Google Maps satellite view. And I started investigating that feature that's in between Antarctica and South America. And then I started following it. And it looked to me like a bullet went through it. And I said, "I'll be darned." And then I'd also known that geologists were looking for some kind of asteroid impact near the Yucatan. And then you look at the object on the claim it was an object that formed the Caribbean Sea. These two things, the one down in the southern part of South America and the one in the northern part of South America, they seem to have similarities to them. And that's when things clicked. And we already recognize, everyone recognizes that Africa was at one time connected to South America, that India and Madagascar were once connected to Africa, and it just all came to what happened.
It's Pangea, right? So that's the term that people may have heard, Pangea.
That's what geologists call it now. I don't know what the Earth looked like exactly before that, before this event. But there's no question to me. Well, in fact, I'm not going to get into too big of a critique of continental drift, but the idea of continental drift came about because back in the turn of almost the previous century, a guy named Wegener, he got this idea that the continents once fit together, and we had the mid-Atlantic ridge, and they thought, the sea floor was separating through this mechanism, and there had to be some way of the land masses subducting underneath. But the problem with that was, and they're still looking for it, they wanted to know what kind of forces would provide the energy, that sufficient amount of energy to move land masses over such great distances. And so they've been searching for these convective currents, and there are papers that go back to the mid-1960s, even before that, that are strong critiques of that idea that you can have these convective currents underneath the surface. Okay, well, that's enough of that. I wasn't, I've come to discover that now, or learn about that now, but that has nothing to do with the idea that came to me that one day. And so I looked at what is, in fact, maybe can we go to the website or the slides?
Yeah, we can go up in this way that somebody at home can kind of follow along and understand what we're working with there.
Okay, and so the second slide is a critique of, a brief critique. I did a quick summary of it, of continental drift. Okay, so there we go. And then the next slide shows where I think the remnants are from these two from the simultaneous impacts. And they frame South America. I believe that they were eastward moving. That's actually very important, that they were eastward moving. That they ripped North and South America from where they once were. The fact that the Andes are so tightly framed against the west coast of South America is explained by, in fact, you took your two fingers and ran your two fingers across the drapes or the curtains, right? So the curtain between your two fingers is going to be tightly compressed, where the stuff above your uppermost finger is going to be, it's going to be some kind of a bow to it.
And so your basic, so the current popular thought and popular theory is that continental drift, they basically just drifted apart. Your idea is that comets actually came in.
No, these were not comets. These were not comets. Comets are very, their composition is water. They're very porous. We'll talk about comets in a little while. But these were very solid objects.
Mm-hmm.
Where they came from, I don't know. Could they have been asteroids? Yes. Could they have possibly been two small moons? Yes. I have no idea. And in fact, if there's going to be any kind of investigations that might come from it, someone would have to pay to go and investigate the very, if you will, the easternmost remnants, drill down in and find out what were these things.
Well, there's that company, it's not SpaceX, but there's another one formed by, I can't remember, I think it's the Google co-founder, or it's not Bezos, I think it's the Google co-founder, where they're going to start trying to mine asteroids, because essentially an asteroid is nothing but heavy metals. Not an asteroid, sorry, an unformed planet. Because a lot of these unformed planets, they get to the point where they're molten lava, they never quite form, all the heavy metals sink to the middle, the lava comes off, and they just are drifting through space, and it's nothing but these heavy metals. So if that could be it, because that would be one of the things that might be dense enough to actually cause this, maybe it would be worth their effort to go investigate to try and get the composition of something before they go out to outer space and try and wrangle one.
Well, perhaps, but the point here is that whatever these two things were, they came in together.
Okay.
And it's the simultaneity that's important. It's what causes the Andes to be so tightly framed. The southernmost one projects India. So India was attached to Africa down below or down south, and India gets projected with like a slap shot in hockey. It's right at ground zero. It picks up all this kinetic energy, and it starts moving. So you have, on the front end of these things, we can explain how Africa and India were projected forward, while back behind, we have two continents are going to be dragged. They're going to be dragged out of where they were, and they're going to be moved across. Now, we already believe through continental drift that the continents are moving. We just didn't know the mechanism to move. So now we can see, it's right there for everyone to see.
And that's something that's very good to explain. Just really quick, just a really basic fundamental principle of physics is energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So what Michael is talking about here, one of his big presuppositions is that the continental drift theory doesn't quite take into effect where all that energy came from to create these huge land masses to actually separate and move that far. However, the kinetic energy from something like a dense unformed planet or asteroid or planet or whatever it is, or if you're a Starship Troopers guy, bombs from the bugs, whatever it is comes from outer space and hits the planet, and the kinetic energy of that coming into our atmosphere, falling miles and miles and miles into the land, and then hitting the land, that kinetic energy has to disperse somewhere. It would then disperse into the land masses and push them apart just like a bomb.
That's correct. So yesterday I was at a briefing, and I got to thinking, I looked up the density of asteroids, estimated the volume of these two objects based on the remnant sizes, and estimate their velocity. You can, I looked up the meteor that hit in Russia recently that all those dashboard-mounted cameras caught.
Yeah.
And first of all, that thing had a very shallow attack angle, and I'm going to claim that these two objects had a very shallow attack angle as they hit the Earth, and that's important because if they came in a little bit more, if you will, perpendicular toward or at a different angle toward the surface, the effects would have been quite different.
Right, it would have essentially
but these things were massive. You're talking about things. The remnants are 500 miles in diameter.
Well, and so this is, I know in the Yucatan, there's an impact crater where they put that, the radio observatory, right? It's the largest impact crater that we know of where they stretched. Is that in Yucatan or further in South America?
I have no idea.
But these are actually in the ocean. You assume that both these impacts hit in the ocean. I'm looking at your pictures right now, or all four of them.
We'll talk about that too. They hit on, oh boy, this is where it gets real controversial, folks. There wasn't that much water on the planet when these two hit.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in the second event.
Okay.
So the simultaneous impacts is the first event. And what's really neat about those two objects, and anyone can go on Google Maps or Google Earth and look at them. You can just sit there and investigate them. They each have a southward tilt to them. Now that's actually fascinating. Now how is it that you get these two energetic objects? At least I'm claiming that they're energetic objects. I don't know. I'm just looking at the evidence that's available to me. I'm claiming that we're looking at the remnants of two energetic objects that came in and messed up the planet as it previously was. And there wasn't as much water then as there is now. And again, now that's where people really call me kooks. Okay, fine. I don't care.
Well, it does. It explains a lot. Have you ever heard of the Piri-Reis map?
No.
So this thing's called the Piri-Reis map. Anybody that listens to this program knows I'm a Freemason, so I'm an avid student of ancient history, of pre-textbook history. And so there's this thing called the Piri-Reis map. Piri-Reis was a Turkish admiral in the 800s, I believe, that he was found to have this map. Now, he said he had this map from other ancient maps he had copied from the libraries at Alexandria before they were burned. These maps had an accurate depiction of Antarctica before it had ice on it. So the thing about this, they were perfect cartography. So we didn't have the adequate technology to do perfect cartography until the 1700s. So the things that this presupposes, number one, this map was built when we had the technology to accurately depict landmasses, and two, it was made when there was no ice on Antarctica, which means it was a very long time ago, which also gives that idea that maybe it was a pre-time when there wasn't enough liquid to make ice over Antarctica. So there are a lot of underlying theories that have been kind of blacklisted for a long time that people are starting to look back at current popular theory and go, maybe you guys don't have it right. So I think
we're kind of getting a little ahead of the second event that we'll talk about, but there is a story of the flood that is not just in the Bible. It's in a whole bunch of histories throughout the planet. It's ubiquitous, this story. So we'll get to that in a while. So maybe I'm not so kooky. So what I'm trying to do is I'm synthesizing. I'm trying to make sense out of many facts.
Well, and if you look at, if somebody had just looked at Google Maps, you'd look at it and go, wow, that looks really cool. But hearing and reading and looking at the pictures that you have where you've outlined exactly where you get these theories, it's one of those things where you look at it and go, wow, how did I never see that before?
Well, I'm glad you appreciate that. So can we get more into it? So I'm going to say is that these two objects, when they came in, they separated the land masses, they configured the continents as they currently are, they created the major ocean basins, they gave us the tilt of the planet. So we get the seasons from this because this event tilted the planet. It's the curvature in the remnant troughs. I'm going to call them troughs. A scientist, a geologist laughed at me for calling them troughs. And I've had discussions with these guys, some of them. And I was laughed at because I called these things troughs, which we don't see anywhere else. What a silly argument that is. Anyways, this event took minutes at the most. It was a very quick event because of the velocities involved. It was an extinction event. Because these two objects were eastward moving and they tilted the planet, it's likely that these the impacts also affected the length of the day. They may have increased the angular velocity, if you will.
Well, and that's not very far off, because there have been a lot of theories out there saying that an impact was the extinction event. We know there's an extinction event.
This was the extinction event.
Right. And so there's a lot of credence to your theory there. And also, for people that go, wow, tilted the Earth, that couldn't happen, that quake that hit Japan that destroyed the nuclear reactors, they're saying that actually tilted the Earth just a little bit, but enough to actually throw our timing off by a millisecond. But still, understand that what he's talking about is not that far out there. It's happened in our very recent history. So this is very possible.
One other thing that is kind of interesting, you ever wondered why is the moon so cratered and we're not?
Yeah.
Well, what happened from this event was this is conjecture, but it's probably likely, based on the size of these two things and the energies involved, that the stuff that was that was ejected at the impact probably left Earth's orbit and was picked up by the moon's orbit. Shouldn't say orbit. Was picked up by, or leaves the Earth's gravitational pull and got picked up by the moon's gravitational field, and boom, the moon gets cratered by the stuff ejected from this impact.
Right.
Simultaneous. That's a claim. That's conjecture, but it's not far fetched.
Yeah, it's an interesting claim.
Cratered and we're not. So
well,
maybe this.
I've heard other theories as well that the other planets serve, like, there are so many people that ask, why is Earth hospitable? Like, why does Earth have life and all these other planets don't? And I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's possibly that they're like our offensive guard, that all these other planets have been taking the brunt of meteors and asteroids for years, and we've been having it easy.
Well, this event was, pretty traumatic to this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of the things that I'm using as evidence, first of all, I'm assuming that Google Maps and Google Earth information it's data.
Right.
That's an assumption I'm making. And I actually visited MBARI, Monterey Bay Aquarium and Research Institute, up in Moss Landing about a week and a half ago. And I talked to one of their scientists about my ideas, and he agreed that indeed Google Maps information is accurate. So that's very good to know. It's important. So that's data. And so I'm taking this data and I'm interpreting the data, which is what a scientist is supposed to do. And if the data can be interpreted in such a way that contradicts currently accepted theories or hypotheses, then we really need to reinvestigate those theories and hypotheses.
But it's hard to get people to do that, and it's easier for them to call you a kook, because if they do that, the implication... So I did pre-med here at UCLA. While I was doing pre-med, I'm a nerd, so I watched Through the Wormhole, How the Universe Was Made. I watched nothing but science programs. I've got 2 kids, so I don't have a lot of free time, but when I have free time, I watch science programs. And I would be learning Newtonian physics while I was in class every night. And then I would go home and watch Through the Wormhole and hear all these theoretical physicists, string theory guys, talking about how all these new discoveries have vastly changed the way that physicists are looking at physics, and then go into class the next day and hear just plain old Newtonian physics. And I would go, what the hell is going on here? Why am I hearing all these physicists saying physics is vastly changing, but I'm still learning the same thing I learned 20 years ago? Because it costs a lot of money to rewrite textbooks. It takes a lot of people who have based their entire career and all of their theories and all their published articles on what was in the textbooks when they learned. So anytime somebody comes out and goes, hey, I think I've got a different idea here, and all of science is theory until it's proven or disproven, and then it becomes law. So anybody that comes out and challenges those theories that they base their entire career on and all these textbooks on and all their educational curricula on, when that's challenged, and you heard in the last episode my buddy Clint Janulis, who he was yelled at the archeological conference that he challenged the current theory, and he gets yelled at by everybody in archaeology, but then offered a PhD at Oxford, because people understand you need somebody looking outside the box and challenging current theory, or else we will never progress or never find out the reality. So, sorry I keep butting in, but
that's okay. That's great. So my idea is that these two objects came in and they reconfigured the planet as it is today. And all it created... Now, it's interesting, too, now, that this event that I'm going to describe actually created the formation of what they call now the tectonic plates. No one knows how they were created. I'm going to tell you, this is what did it. This is what created the plates. And it's interesting. You go to a USGS survey or USGS website.
So U.S. Geological Survey.
Right. And you look at their earthquake map. It's very fascinating that the two impact troughs actually formed their own plate. Or
And
their
you have a slide that actually shows where the impacts
Very
are.
good.
So,
It's one of the last ones. And so we can go to the slides, but I just describe what happens that as India and Africa are conjoined and they start moving northward, India has really picked up a lot of kinetic energy, or that, if you will, the right side of that mass picks up a lot of energy. India impacts with what is now Malaysia. You can see the remnants in the ocean bottom. You can see the remnants of this impact, the wakes, if you will, and the stretching of what is now Malaysia. And you see the trail that India left, how India just barely picks off and hits Saudi Arabia. The Arabian Peninsula causes that to be sheared off of Africa. So that's what happens on the front end of the simultaneous impacts. And what's happening on the back end is kind of neat. And so that's how, I think we described already how South America was yanked out, and the Andes are tightly compressed on the west coast because South America is framed by these two events, by the two impacts. But North America is the fun one, and it's kind of neat. So it's kind of hard to pick this out, but North America, because of there's only the object on the south, North America gets ripped out of where its outline exists, over from Kamchatka down through Japan, all the way down to the little curl near the equator. You can see it in the bathymetry. It's very deep. The Marianas Trench is over there. So North America is ripped out of there. The land is compressed up to what I call the release line. And so there's a series of underground, or now there's subsurface, there's submerged volcanoes that runs from Kamchatka. It comes down almost due south, and then it makes a bend toward the Hawaiian Islands. Those are all subsurface volcanoes. Well, that's where North America released, if you will. So we have this compression of the mountains, the Rockies. So I'm explaining how the Rockies were formed. Geologists still are debating how the Rockies were formed. This is how the Rockies were formed. The northern impact compresses the landscapes, and then finally, so you may have heard of the coefficient, or the force of static friction versus the force of kinetic friction. Mm-hmm. It takes more to get an object going than it does to keep it going.
Right, and then an object in motion stays in motion. Right.
Well, that's one of that's the first law. Mm-hmm. But what I'm getting at here is if you have a box on the floor and you go to push it, to get it moving, it takes more force than it does to keep it moving.
Right.
It has to do with the coefficient of static friction. So anyways, eventually, the forces are so great from this northern impact that North America gets released. And so now here is the transit of North America. It starts moving across and forming the Pacific Basin. And it turns out that there are, I identify them, I call them drag locations. But have you ever taken a dog to the vet, and the dog doesn't want to go to the vet and kind of puts his claws down and he's like, oh my God, you ever try that? So what happens? You've got these drag locations, right? And they're going to do kind of the same thing. So you have the landscape that is it's compressed, and then there are these four locations. They're clearly identifiable. And so as the continent is moving to the east, these four places that are on the west coast, they impede the motion, and they start unfurling the compressed landscapes, which is how we get the Central Valley in California. It's how you get the Baja Peninsula. It's the Baja Peninsula, and it's this unfurling that weakens the landscapes that gives us the faults that are out there right now. So that's kind of neat. That one, when I figured that one out, it was kind of. And of course, I lived in Hawaii. My first tour when I was on active duty was out in Hawaii, and I was actually the only earthquake that I've experienced was on the Big Island. Mm-hmm. I was at the Pakaloa training area in 1984, and I'm in a Quonset hut with the other lieutenants and captains, and all of a sudden, everything shakes. It's like, well, what was that? And we recognized it was a volcano. And a couple of weeks later, Mauna Loa erupted. And then Kilauea erupted soon thereafter, and Kilauea has been erupting ever since. Well, the legend out in Hawaii is that, the legend, right? The idea of continental drift is that the islands are moving over to the northwest over a hot spot. Okay, well, if you look at these drag locations, one of them goes right through the Hawaiian Islands. And if you go far enough to the east of the Hawaiian Islands, you can actually see these scrapes, these very large scrapes, if you will, the dog's claws. Mm-hmm. And if you draw lines back through them to the Hawaiian Islands, it goes right through Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, Haleakala. In other words, it goes to all the different islands. It points to where the volcanoes are or were at one time.
And for those people at home, this PowerPoint, again, I strongly encourage you to go check it out, because he has these screenshots basically from Google Maps or Google Earth that shows specifically lined out where, it's like hey, look at this part of the picture. And it's amazing, because once you look at this, anybody who played with blocks as a kid, you can really start to see where everything lined up, where it drug, and where a lot of these theories and presuppositions are coming from.
Thank you. I hope they go there. It's kind of neat. And what's interesting about this too is that this is not highbrow science. It's just looking at evidence, interpreting it, and coming up with something that explains things that explains one very important event in Earth history that has not been explained yet.
Well, and it's hidden in plain sight. I mean, you look at these, and it's one of those, oh my God, how did I never see this before? Because it really is. It's plain as day now that you've said, hey, look at this part of the picture.
Okay, so let's talk about the tilt. This is a really cool thing.
Okay.
So you have these two objects. They're very energetic. They're massive, and they come in. At least I'm claiming that they came in simultaneously. They hit the Earth. They're doing all this. They're messing up the continents, and they've projected India and Africa slightly northward. And India, in particular, goes at a very fast speed into the Asian subcontinent. And the impact. I mean, if you look at the series of mountains that impact caused, it goes hundreds of miles, maybe 1,000 miles north or northeastward. Anyway, now let's think about this. If you have an object, so I'm going to claim that these two massive objects traveled straight in their reference frame. They're not going to curve. So if the Earth beneath them tilts due to India's impact into the subcontinent, it tilts northward. So as these two objects are traveling straight and the Earth beneath them tilts northward, their paths should curve to the south. And I'll be darned, both of those paths curve to the south. And so those slides are also out there. And that, to me, is just, so there are the seasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, it's amazing because it has to be the perfect storm to create habitable life, and people, there's so many questions as to why are there so many planets out there yet we haven't found intelligent life on another one yet. If you think about all of the things that had to come into play to make this happen, and we'll get into your other theory a little bit later about where all the water came from, but that is, with our planet being so comprised of water, it wasn't always comprised of that much water, yet having that much water in sea life subsists a lot of our civilization and creates for a lot of our ability to thrive and grow, and all of these things came together. Our perfect seasons, our spread out year, all this stuff had to be the perfect storm for honestly a weak life form like humans to be able to subsist and thrive and potentiate.
So at the end of this, one of the last slides, I kind of summarize all that happens. And so apparently there have been, according to geologists, there have been two major mass extinctions. One was around 65 million years ago, and they conjecture another one was maybe 200 million years ago. And so I'm going to claim that this was at least 65 million years ago. This is obviously an extinction event. It created the boundaries that are seismically active. California is not moving into the sea. It's not going to fall into the sea. Some people might be disappointed by that. But once the point is that once these continents were configured by this event, they haven't been moving. Now they have been settling. This was a traumatic event, and there are other forces. There are other forces at work on the Earth. The moon and its orbit around the Earth and its relation to the sun, the tide. There are different forces at work on the planet, and because of this trauma from at least 65 million years ago, we get earthquakes to this day due to settling. So here the geologists have been measuring movements for the last however many years that they've had, either satellite data or whatever. Great, the planet's moving a little bit here and there. We can't infer from that. It's a hasty generalization to infer from that continental drift. What we can infer from that is that the planet is still settling. It's still recovering from this event that I'm claiming happened.
Right.
How's it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if it was that traumatic of an event to knock the planet off of its axis onto a new tilt, basically, and to project all of these land masses apart from each other, yeah, it would take more than a few minutes to settle down after that.
All right, and so it's kind of interesting to think about what the Earth was like before this event. So the the axis, the axis of rotation was perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic. In other words, the planet was, that's the way to say it. The axis would have been perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic, which is the plane that we follow as we go around the sun. Very likely that it may have been warmer because of less. That's actually a tough comment. I'm not sure of this one, but it could have been a warmer place at certain places because of the lesser rotation. I think that the planet rotated on a day. Our day was different that way, so that would have had effects on the climate. So anyway, so that's the simultaneous. We'll see how it goes. See if it ever gets picked up by real scientists that apparently are not. I've been accused of a lot of things.
Yeah, well, that's a big problem, is that you are challenging a lot of the current ideas that are out there, and you're going to be the challenger. You're going to be the underdog for a little while, but again, for anybody that wants to follow along at home, it looks like common sense, and it's one of these things that makes you want to go, oh my God, why didn't my teacher tell me that when I was a kid? Because it's plain, especially one of these last slides where he shows the separation boundaries and all the seismic activity amongst them. And I bet if you overlaid volcanoes on these too, it would be a pretty interesting find. Because as he said earlier, like, there is a lot of coincidence between those two. So I think you've definitely come on to something here. And
oh, great.
I really hope, I seriously, again, encourage people to check these PowerPoints out, because it's opened my eyes quite a bit.
Great. So now what's interesting about this is that if the continents aren't moving, then we ought to see evidence perhaps on the Earth that might corroborate that things haven't been moving. And so that's kind of a lead-in to the next event.
Okay.
You want to go to that?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, all right. And so we're going to use Google Maps again, Google Earth satellite view, and there's a story behind this. I was working on a paper with a couple of colleagues on the growth and the decay of the glaciers, of the cryosphere. And so I got involved with the Earth's temperature record from the last 800,000 years that was derived from ice cores in Antarctica. And that temperature record has a real interesting feature. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. We'll get to that. Because it's perhaps a part of making sense of different pieces of evidence to come up with an idea. And so, concurrently with that, I'm retiring from the Army, and I moved out here to California, and I'm in the Monterey area, and right off the coast here is this very famous thing called the Monterey Canyon. Mm-hmm. And some of the scientists out here, it's a very well-studied place, and some of the scientists out here believe that this canyon was caused by, or was created by, subsurface currents. And I can believe a lot of things, but that's not something that I can believe. And we'll talk about that. Yeah. Anyway, so I looked at this, at the topography out there, and I said to myself, this looks like a bunch of submerged rivers. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that there are places around the planet. It's not just off the coast of California, but there are places around the planet where we can find what I call submerged rivers. And so I learned a vocabulary word while I was up in Barn the other day. The word was subaerial. So these were subaerially cut. In other words, below the air. So they were exposed rivers at one time.
And it does. For everybody at home, we're only on slide 2 right now. And further on in the slides, he gets out to show more of a global perspective. But when you're looking at these, it looks exactly like you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa from the sky. It's obvious that these are cut by water, yet they're in water. So
now that's a great point. So if your readers or the viewers, if listeners want to do something interesting, so go to Google Earth, take your mouse, and follow one of these terrain features underwater, and watch the depth. It always decreases. Now, what's the chance? What's the chance that you could follow a random path underwater and not go uphill?
Right.
All right. So follow these paths, and they go downhill now, or they get deeper. So now, how could that happen? Right? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting. It's another fact to add to this.
Right.
Now, another thing to look at is that let's assume that they are rivers. You notice how well preserved they are.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, if they are rivers, they were covered rather quickly. Right. So that's another facet to pick up.
That's an interesting point to add to it. Yeah.
And so we'll discuss the Monterey Canyon system in a minute, but it's got an oxbow in it. So in one of the slides, I was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art a year ago, and I went to the Hudson River School artist section. They're just beautiful, and sure enough, there's a painting there called the Oxbow by Thomas Cole, and it was the Connecticut River, and he was on Mount Holyoke when he painted this painting. But I wanted people to see what an oxbow looks like, because maybe some people don't know what an oxbow is.
Right.
But and then there's a reason for it. And so then I show the oxbow what it looks like today, and we've got highways running through it, and I'm sure that Thomas Cole would be spinning his grave if he knew what it looks like now. Anyway, so then I show the Monterey system again, and sure enough, about 40 miles offshore and about 2 miles down, there's what appears to me to be an oxbow, and I label it with an O for obvious reasons on the map. And then right below it, there's a landslide. Mm-hmm. You can see where the wall of the river at one time collapsed, probably as the ocean was rising. We'll get to that in a minute. And notice how that landslide falls straight down the gravitational gradient.
Right.
It doesn't meander. It just goes straight down the gravitational gradient. And so all above it, we see these meanders. Meanders are features of rivers, right? We recognize that. There's meanders everywhere there. And interestingly, what's even more interesting, perhaps, is that the Salinas and Carmel rivers, which are currently flowing systems, they're cut right out into the bay. They're continuations out into the bay from currently flowing features. That's an amazing thing, too. How is that possible, right?
Yeah.
What a coincidence. So I show the Monterey Canyon system, and as well as other systems to the south. Then I show the Gulf of Alaska. And sure enough, up in the Gulf of Alaska, there, especially the river on the north that flows toward the Aleutian chain, or toward the feature that was cut during the first event.
Right.
Take your mouse and follow that thing out. And sure enough, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and this is amazing because you can literally follow it from the landmass off into the shallow, and then all the way into the deeper ocean, all the way.
Now, and then check the one out if you get a chance. There's actually one of the rivers that flows between. It meanders between. It snakes its way between two volcanoes. Uh-huh. And it's down in the southeast part of the southeast part of the image.
Yeah.
And then we go off the coast of Ireland. Sure enough, there's another one that begins 2,000 feet below sea level and it finishes 12,000 feet below sea level. Mm-hmm. Now, how is that happening? How did that happen? We go to the Big Island. The Big Island. So the north coast of the Big Island shows the same features. Certainly Oahu and Molokai. They show similar drainage systems. And if you look on this particular one of Molokai, I have ST labeling a point. So I mean system terminus. This is where what looks to me where the drainage system seems to stop. Mm-hmm. And it's fairly deep. And I think I did that with the Monterey Canyon system as well.
Right. Labeling
where I think they may have entered into what may have been basins, actual, maybe the previous ocean levels. But to me, these all look like, to me, now who am I, right? I'm just a guy who's observing things. I'm not a geologist, but to me, these things look like drainage systems.
Well,
they're associated with current features that continue on into the ocean. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, it's a great observation, and the thing that you pointed out earlier, which I really want to hit on, right now the whole Boston thing is going on, and so a lot of people have been getting their video or their information via Twitter and social media. And so the thing about this new change with Google Earth, social media, things like that, in the past, we used to get all of our information through a lens, that lens of other people's education and other people's view on the world. It used to have to go from knowledge to a professor or clergy or whoever it was, and then onto you through their lens. Now with the advent of Google Earth or Twitter or whatever, you are no longer having to go through an intermediary. You are able to get data or information directly from the source. And this is the great thing, and this is probably what pisses a lot of people off. I know Twitter is making the media absolutely insane because you no longer have to go through the media to get information because everybody can hop on their phone and video an image and upload it right now or just say what they're seeing. Same thing with Google Earth. This isn't requiring somebody else to interpret this data. Michael has taken these screenshots and shown you the stuff that's there, you can interpret it for yourself. But after hearing him talk about this and looking at it, you go, holy crap, this is how, oh my God, wow, why has nobody ever taught me this before?
First of all, I'm so thankful that you invited me on because I've tried. I've tried to get this material to geologists, and I get scoffed at. Okay, fine. I'm willing to accept that because the people who are scoffing at me are responsible for their science, just as you said. These guys are meant to protect their fields, and I got it. So when you got a radical guy like me coming in with these ideas, they're going to be dismissed, and they're dismissed in many different ways. But it's kind of hard to argue with fact, and so I'm going with fact. These facts are available to me.
Yeah. Well, I was speaking with my Terry, looking through the lens of politics with this. I was speaking with my friend Terry about this the other day on the drive home, and he was saying, and we were talking about politics specifically, where a politician will say, that guy doesn't have a plan. And you go, okay, well, what's your plan? Well, it doesn't matter what my plan is. That guy doesn't have a plan. And that's what this seems like, the same thing, where all the scientists are going, well, I can't explain it, but you're wrong. Well, okay, why am I wrong? And so what's right? Well, I don't know, but you're wrong, and you're crazy, and we shouldn't listen to you. But this is plain as day. I can't believe people could ever discount this.
So now, if we've been in pools. Almost all of us have, at one time or another, been in a pool, and you have the jets that come out from the side that circulate the water, right? How far out do you have to go before that high-velocity water is no longer, if you will, focused?
Right.
A couple of feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you think about this now? How can we have a focused current somehow traveling 40 miles offshore? It's even more than 40 miles. That system off the Monterey coast here goes off maybe 70, 80 miles at the terminus. I mean, how can you have focused currents like that? And the diffusivity of water and the forces under it's just impossible. Right. And these guys can tell me that they have, the Mbari people will tell me that they've observed they've had equipment that's been washed downstream by mudslides or slides underwater. Well, guys, you're not looking at the cause of the canyon. You're looking at an effect from the canyon. Right. They've conflated cause and effect, but they have to explain it somehow. And so that's what they're thinking. They think that subsurface currents created the Monterey Canyon. I can hit the I believe button hard sometimes, but I can't even find it in this case.
It's funny because their popular theory is more, it takes a lot more faith in what they're saying than yours does. Because, again, here, listen to them. It's like that whole, E equals MC plus 3/5, blah, 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 magic, and then answer. Like, yours is just, hey, here it is. Here's what I think happened. Here are my theories that bring it together.
Well, I'm glad that you say that, and I hope that others will find it this way, too. So anyway, I'm going to claim that these things that are more than 2 miles below water were covered up. So then I've got to say, where did that water come from? And then you realize, it's not a hard calculation to figure out the volume that's involved, and it can't be frozen and stored at the poles. It's just impossible. And so it has to have come from somewhere else. Okay, so let's go to Google Earth or Google Maps again, and I'm going to tell you that there was a huge comet. And of course, there's going to be a bone of contention right there because we have never seen a comet of this size before. So one of the contentions is going to be that scientists apparently have seen them all and can therefore say this thing couldn't have happened. Right. Okay, guys, whatever you want to say, got it. So I'm going to show you where it hit. There's a little bit of math involved with it, not a whole lot, but there's a little bit of math in it. Remember this thing called the perpendicular bisector of an arc? Mm-hmm. So the perpendicular bisector of an arc will point to the center of a circle, if I got that right. Right. And so we're going to see that. We're going to use that in just a moment. And so let's find where this comet is. It's big, and it's just southeast of South Africa, almost due south of Madagascar and north of Antarctica.
And quite appropriately, we're on slide 13 right now. If anybody at home is following along, we're at 13, where it's the comet impact location.
All right, and so I'm going through, and so I identify it, and I do my best to show its width. I show the scrape. That's a dead center scrape from this thing. It has it sort of has the classic crater shape that some folks are going to want to see. One critique I've heard was that a comet coming in would have so much energy that it would do more damage than this. Well, we sent a probe. The United States sent a probe into Temple 1, Comet Temple 1, and it was found to be very porous. What was it? Something like 25% ice, or something like that, 75% empty space.
Is that the one that we crashed into the moon?
No. We actually sent a probe into a comet a couple years ago. So
really?
It's called Temple 1, Tempel 1. So people can Google that, or Deep Impact. And so we found that the comet was porous and an amalgamation of rock and ice. And so for those of us who lived up north and have thrown snowballs, and again, this is not a great analogy, but you've thrown a snowball into a brick wall, you know what happens? The snowball disintegrates.
Right.
Now this thing was massive, it's moving very quickly, so it's not going to quite disintegrate immediately, it's going to cause some damage. And sure enough, we get the classic arc shape that's seen down there. And so I do some analysis. I look at the western edge of this thing, and I show how it deformed the landscape that indicates that there was a very energetic collision. This is a good one, I go to magnetic anomaly maps. And so when this thing hit, we should expect to see magnetic anomalies. And sure enough, the one slide I point right to, or two different magnetic anomaly maps, they point right to this lit up area that is coincidental or co-located with what I'm claiming is to be the comet impact site.
And so the magnetic anomalies would be caused from whatever leftover is from the actual thing that hit us, because it would have metals in it, right?
Not sure. It may be that, I'm not an expert in it, but I think it may go something like this, that the impact forces caused chemical changes in the Earth's crust. The forces may have caused things to melt, and when they aligned with the magnetic field that was there at the time, and based on the changes in the magnetic field now, we can see anomalies in the area.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because there would be a physical change if you think about the amount of friction from rock on rock. I mean, you get two pieces of flint and rub them together, or two pieces of any kind of rock, and you can see, even if you don't get sparks, you get heat, and the amount of heat that would be caused from something like this would cause something to melt, cause something to change physical state, possibly. Yeah, maybe even vaporize.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's right. So, in other words, there's a physical change down there, and by golly, it's coincidental with what I'm claiming to be the impact site. Okay. So, then the next slide, I just do a little bit of math. I talk about the volume of water that this thing could have brought, and so I estimate its size as a sphere. That's a guess. And then I do the 4/3 pi r cubed, and then think that it's porous, just like Temple 1. I do these assumptions, and I get that this thing yielded an ocean depth of about 3.57 kilometers. That's a lot of water.
Right. And so the ice would come because it was in deep space and absolutely frozen, right?
Well, that's what a comet is. So a comet is composed of ice and rock and other things, but it's very porous. Well, excuse me. The one that we hit, I got to be careful about generalizing to the whole. But we have evidence that at least one of them was porous.
Right. And
so I went from that available evidence and made this assumption to come up with a calculation of how much water this thing added. And so what's really neat is I had someone make a map for me where I asked, would you please take off this much water? What would the Earth look like? And it's a beautiful map. I mean, I look at this one and I just shake my head and I go, wow, that is really neat. So this, to me, this is what this map will show in dark tan, exposed land that is now covered by the oceans. It also shows the previous oceans, what it looked like. So yes, there were oceans on the Earth at the time, which obviously there were. We have the fishes and the whales that were evolving. They were still underwater. They evolved somewhere, but their terrain just got big, right? So their got good.
Well, and this,
and so,
for anybody that
shows.
For anybody that looks at this and says, wow, there's no way this is possible, I can't imagine this, go in and research some of these things. There was a city very recently found off of the coast of Japan, and it's only a few miles off the coast, but it's a complete city. They've found temples and things like that, and it can't be... I've seen... Graham Hancock went there and did an underground... he did a scuba diving expedition with a video camera, and if you look at the perfectly squared angles of this thing, number one, it predates the pyramids by a long time. And it's got the technology of building with a perfect 90-degree angles. It cannot be an anomaly. It cannot be something that happened through normal erosion. It's 90-degree angles. That doesn't happen in nature at all, especially with water erosion. So they started finding a lot of these other things that are just, a couple or sometimes even a dozen miles off of the landmass where we are. And so a lot of people have come to these ideas that it's very possible that these were at one time the oceanfront property, and now they're completely underwater. And this is exactly where this comes from. This
is interesting in many ways because not only because of the story of the flood, but also to think that we do a little bit more science. PV equals nRT, the ideal gas likely. That's what that's called. And the higher the pressure, the higher the temperature. And you go, okay, so let's say we were evolving in these exposed landscapes. In other words, we humans were evolving in the lands that were previously exposed prior to what I'm claiming to be the comet impact that flooded the areas that we evolved in. So we humans got flushed out of the abyss. Let's call it the abyss. But let's think about what the Earth was like. So let's remove the water. Just kind of close your eyes and think about what was the Earth like back then. So the atmosphere, right, that's above us now would have been down in the abyss. And so we're talking almost 3 miles of water. Let's just take 2 miles off. So we got 2 miles of atmosphere above those exposed lands. It would have been warmer down there. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And we humans don't have a whole lot of fur. Yeah. Isn't that interesting, right? Because you think about where could we, so the idea now is that we evolved in Africa. Well, I'm going to claim that the missing link is buried under 2 miles of water. Mm-hmm. We're not going to find it. We humans evolved down there, and we got flushed out to where we are now. That's my claim. I'm a kook for saying it, perhaps, but I'm willing to suffer the aspersions. I'm okay with it.
And this is almost, it's greater than the difference of saying going from Death Valley to Colorado Springs, because there is a huge elevation change, right?
That's correct.
And so if we did evolve in one form or fashion, in one habitat, and then all of a sudden had to go from Death Valley to Colorado Springs, that's a great change in everything that would be required for you to propagate the species. So the way you procure food, the way you mate, the way you do everything would be greatly changed. Absolutely.
So now the question really is, in my mind, in my silly mind, the question is, when did it happen? So this is kind of fun. Like I told you, we're working on a paper involving the cryosphere. And so I've got the Earth's temperature record. And the temperature record has an interesting feature. Now, the key part of it is that it came, or an important feature of it is that it came from South America. Excuse me, not South America. It came from Antarctica, an Antarctic ice core. And the first 400,000 years of this record, that goes from basically 800,000 years before the present to 400,000 years before the present, the maximum temperatures are not that high. And then about 450,000 years ago, 400,000 years ago, there's an interglacial temperature peak that is basically double what the previous peaks used to be. And when I was working with the other guys with this, it's like, what happened? What happened to the Earth? And so that was kind of a feature, like we couldn't explain it. And what's fascinating too is that in this global warming debate, people pull up this temperature record, but they only use the 450,000 year record. They kind of omit the stuff from 800,000 years to 450 because it's got that strange feature that no one can explain.
Well, you can use data, and that's any statistician will tell you. You can use data to prove or disprove anything that you want. You can take the same set of data, give it to a dozen different people, and depending on who's paying their bills, they can interpret it a dozen different ways.
Well, what I'm going to do here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to accept it for what it is, and I'm going to try to figure out, can we explain it? What happened?
And that's a doubling. That's about a doubling. I'm looking at slide 22 right now. It's a doubling in the temperature.
So what I'm going to claim happened, right, is the comet hit, say, maybe 470,000 years ago during a glacial period. Now, if that's true, so let's think about what Antarctica was like prior to the comet. All right, not only is it on the South Pole and therefore cold, but it doesn't have a whole lot of atmosphere above it. Right? No, the atmosphere acts as a blanket. Mm-hmm. Right? So it didn't have, if you will, this blanket because the atmosphere was down in the abyss largely. Right? It didn't have a blanket above it. And so if the comet hit during that period, that glacial period around 470,000 years ago, then once the atmosphere was displaced upward, Antarctica would therefore have a blanket above it, so that during the interglacial times, the peaks where the temperatures are warmer, you get the warming due to the blanket above it.
Right.
That's a hypothesis. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. What the hard part about that one is, we humans are storytellers. It's part of our nature. We are storytellers, and I'm telling you a story today, right? In a way, it's a new story.
Right.
And I wonder, could this story of the flood have persisted for 400,000 years? I don't know. So that's a critique that.
Well, given that there's an extinction event in there somewhere.
Oh my gosh! Certainly the flood. That's an interesting point. Certainly this event would have caused extinctions. I think we humans were lucky to survive it.
Right.
We were flushed out to places we weren't used to. We had, anyway, a lot of things happened, as you were alluding to. And so I talk about how that might have been one time when it happened. There's other evidence that might support that. I cite a paper. We'll not get into that right now. But the other time, maybe it happened during the recent glacial period. The most recent glacial period was something like 70,000 years long.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like the planet was coming out of a glacial, and all of a sudden it went right back down. The temperature record, went very cold again. And so perhaps this comet caused such change that it happened recently. And of course, 30,000 years ago, or maybe who knows how long ago, maybe then the oral record, our human tradition, could have lasted long enough to make that persist, to allow it to persist. I don't know. I'm already called a kook for believing this anyways. People believe that the Earth has had the oceans since nearly its beginning. But I think the evidence supports completely different finding. And so, hey, what's the neat part about this is that with science, maybe we can go and verify this hypothesis. And so there's two things I want to do, or I would like to have the funding to do, for anyone out there with the bucks who might be listening, the bucks who might want to support me. Well, let's go to the Southern Ocean, to where the impact area is, or I claim the impact area is, and let's just go to the surface of the ocean's bottom surface, and let's take some samples. And sure enough, if that's comet material, well, at least it establishes that the comet hit.
Right.
What I want to do is establish when. And so now what I want to do, so this is really neat. So let's say I'm right, and upland California now. So we're on the west coast of the United States. There's basically a 2-mile vertical uplift from the first event. We have this massive continental shelf. And so as the atmosphere hits this continental shelf, moving from west to east, it gets uplifted and it condenses. And I believe upland California was a very, very wet place prior to the comet impact. And that's why the Salinas River and that system that I'm claiming that formed Monterey Canyon. And so that system, now think about this. As the comet hits and we get now the ocean levels start rising, the amount of water in the atmosphere is increasing, and it starts raining a whole lot more up here as the ocean's level starts to rise. Now, as the ocean level rises, the Salinas River system to the north that formed Monterey Canyon, I'm claiming is draining a lot more water.
And this is we're over to slide 27 now, which is in the verification phase of the PowerPoint.
Yes, it's the second of the verification slide.
We looked at it at the very beginning, and I went, "Wow, that looks pretty cool." But now, after hearing this and looking at 27, you go again, "Holy shit! How did I not? Oh my God, that explains it."
Okay, so what I'm really getting at is this thing labeled D for delta. There is a classic river delta right out there. And that river delta formed in this manner. As the ocean level is rising, and as the Salinas or the Monterey Canyon system is draining upland California, that is being drenched with new rains that it wasn't used to getting because we're going through this huge transition. As those river waters hit the rising ocean, the sediments that are brought down are deposited and form a delta. And there is a classic delta out there.
So what do I want? For anybody that still needs a club over the head for this, that's what he's saying is that this area that we're looking at that's several miles off the coast and underwater was at once the Mississippi Delta. Was at once that...
Right. So you have this river system that's hitting... Exactly. So you have the Mississippi hits the Gulf of Mexico, it deposits, and we have the classic deltas down there. This is a delta. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go down there and I'd like to have someone drill a deep sediment core. I want to pick up, and it's very difficult to understand from talking to Mbari folks, to get sand into, to collect the sand sediment.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get a core sample of sand from down there. I want to bring it up, and I want to have someone do an analysis for, we can do carbon-14 dating of any organic material that's down there. Because the only way it's going to get down there is by being deposited by a subaerially cut or flowing river.
Well, and there's also 2 or 3 look like what would have at one point been mountains, not or at least hills, that are off there below to the southeast and southwest of that delta. Mm-hmm. And even if there was some existence, there would have to be proof that those were at one time above ground and had some kind of vegetation or something on them. So that'd be interesting to find out too. Being here in California, who would be possibly very interested in this is James Cameron. Because he's very interested in deep ocean research, and he actually has a submersible that he took under last year.
I tried to contact him. I actually sent an email to his site, or I went to his website. I tried to contact him. I tried to get someone. Of course, I'm a kook, so who's going to listen to me, right?
Well, I'm actually having dinner next week with a friend of ours that was on his production team. So I'm going to have to explore this because it's a long shot, but this would be something that if he could get the message, he might be profoundly interested in.
Well, if he's really interested in, so it'd be great if we could go and verify that I'm right. But the very last slide, do I have it included here? Oh yes, I do. The very last slide on this thing, Atlantis, right? The city beneath the sea, mm-hmm. Right? Isn't that kind of interesting? So identify a place, and Google has since smeared this out.
I've seen this. They said it was cables, right? Like underwater cables?
No. They thought it was anomalies that, so they've actually smeared it out. But
again, anomalies don't form right angles.
Well, interesting. If you look at what I have on the site, it actually looks like these, if you want to call them canals that may have been cut by humans.
Or possibly a city block.
Yes, it's actually huge. This is 50 miles by 50 miles.
I'm on 30. This is the final slide in the second PowerPoint. This is 30 of 30.
If you look to the northeast, it looks like this system of canals drains to the northeast. You can actually kind of see a river that goes up there.
Oh, right. Okay. Got it.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So this has since been smeared out, but that's okay. I got a capture of it from a while ago. And then there's that quote from Plato, right? Only the hill shepherds, the small sparks of the human race that were preserved on the mountaintop, survived this event. Isn't that interesting?
Well, and being a Freemason, I study a lot about Plato, Platonic, Neoplatonic, like Hermeticism and things, Aristotle, things like that. And they both say that they were initiates from, Plato said that he went to, that he actually went to Atlantis. There's actually an idea that there was another island called Hyrule off the Irish coast, which is interesting because you've brought up some anomalies off the Irish coast. Mm-hmm. And there is, if you look into very ancient, it's since been erased from recent modern history textbooks, but if you go back to the ancient things, and that's what Masons are, we preserve this history, throughout wars and throughout everything, we preserve history. When libraries get burned, we save books. That's essentially what Masonry is studying ancient history. And so there is a lot of talk and a lot of study of Atlantean principles and of Hyrule and of these other ideas, and this is one of these things that I look at and go, oh my, wow, because there are so many people that we think we study so highly, like Plato, that people cannot look at him and say he was a kook because of all the great things all the great ideas we've come from him, and he is quoted many times as saying that he went to and was taught in Atlantis.
Well, what's fascinating here is I'm thankful for this opportunity to, in a sense, get the history right. Let's get the history of the Earth correct.
Right.
And I think that's really what this is about. And I hope that someday people will not think of me as a kook.
Well, that's
or an imbecile. I was actually called an imbecile recently.
Well, that's, when people are afraid, and it's a fear of challenging all of their assumptions in their entire career. When they're afraid that you're going to upend them, fear begets anger. And that's what it is. The only thing they have left, when they can't disprove you, the only thing they can do is discredit you or call you crazy or call you a kook. But you've got so many things outlined here that make so much sense. It seems it seems to me that it detracts from them to even do that, to even try and label you as a kook, because this bears explanation, and you've explained it. So that's the great thing about science is everything's a theory until it's proven or disproven, then it's either law or it's tossed off the books. This seems that you're coming pretty close to proving it. So all we need is some scientific data of floor samples and things like that, and you're going to be either going to become law or it'll be disproven, and we'll start over again.
That's right. And I'm fine with that.
But it's
great.
It's amazing. And looking at slide number 30, either canals or, a guy spent a lot of time in Afghanistan and North Africa and Iraq flying in a helicopter or looking at geospatial maps from aerial views of the cities and the villages in a lot of those areas, of these areas that would be of the same timeline, look just like this. Because they're not, planned with highways and byways like we are right now with everything in perfect 90-degree angles, but they're like this, where they're very close. And I can imagine that either, as you said, as canals or as a city, as the, I don't know, maybe the foundations that were poured for city blocks there that weren't 100% accurate, and then they would still have the drainage. I don't know. There's a few different ways to look at it, but it's something. That's not nature, and that's not an anomaly, because neither one of those create what I'm looking at right now. This is amazing. It's clearly defined boundaries of something which nature does not create.
Well, wouldn't it be neat if we could, get someone to do the carbon-14 dating of some organic material from the coast of California, so we could actually find out when this happened?
Yeah.
I really think that's the only thing it's the unknown right now is when did this occur?
You're on to something. This is absolutely amazing. And again, I would like to see somebody try to challenge this with something more than you're a kook. I would like to see somebody try to come up with a definable, arguable answer, because I can't. It's amazing. This really is. It's opened my eyes quite a bit.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad for that. Thank you.
Well, I'm an avid student of history, and I'd rather believe the truth than what's popular. And this looks this. There are so many different parts of your theory here that explain so many different things that I don't. It's hard to refute, because it is.
Well, what's fascinating is your reaction to me. So I've given this talk to several groups in different occasions, and people who are not geologists see this and they go, "Well, gosh, that's obvious." Mm-hmm. But it's the geologists who are so adamantly opposed to it, and I guess it's the way it should be in a way. Well, they're responsible for defending their science.
Yeah, this doesn't challenge my career. I'm an author and a hospital administrator. This doesn't challenge my career. It doesn't challenge what I've based my life on. You're essentially telling a lot of these guys, sorry, the last 20, 30 years of your life has been wrong. So it is. And so it is. Fear begets anger. It's scaring a lot of them, because it's planting that seed that things they've taken at pure faith, at 100% face value, could possibly be wrong. But that's science. If you're a true scientist, ego should never be involved in science. You should always be searching for the truth and the knowledge and the source. And the fact that it's angering so many of these guys really means it shows me that you're onto something, because it's opening up doubts that they may have possibly already had.
Isn't that good?
Yeah. Well, Michael Jaye, this is absolutely amazing. Again, everybody listening, please, I highly encourage you, go to farfromcenter.com. I will have these PowerPoints on the website. Click through, because I looked through them a few times before we spoke, and I knew kind of where he was going, but after having this discussion and following along and hearing him explain it a little bit more, this is unbelievable. Please, that's the whole point of having this podcast, was to get information out there to everybody, whether it be about politics or current events or spirituality or history or any or all of the above. This is exactly why I'm doing this. So please go see for yourself. It's close to irrefutable for me. This is unbelievable stuff. Please follow along. Please leave comments on the Facebook page or on the website if you have any ideas. If you're a geologist and you say, tell me, not based on ego, but if you have an irrefutable reason for why this is wrong, go ahead and let me know. But because this is unbelievable. I've never seen anything that could explain any of this quite as well as this. And again, I've been in science for a long time, and I've never heard anything explained quite this well. So If you like it, anything, if you want to get a comment to Michael, leave feedback on the Facebook page, on the website, anywhere that you can, because I think this needs to start a discussion. We need to get more people riled up about this so that we can possibly get somebody involved to get out there and, again, try to either prove or disprove Michael's theories, because either way, they're going to have to do exactly what he's asking. They're going to have to go there. They're going to have to take soil samples. They're going to have to see if what he's cooking with is really oil, and if he's on target here, then we could possibly have just explained a very large part of human history. And if he's not, okay, then hey, at least then we know we need to start somewhere else. But again, I've been following along with these slides, and this is raw data. This is not something that's been put through somebody's lens. These are just pictures taken by satellites. There is nothing. There is no lens. There is no bias. There is nothing else, and it's plain as day if you look at it now after hearing this. So. Thank you again, Michael. I can't thank you enough for being here. This is unbelievable. You've opened my eyes. Thank you to everybody for listening. Please go to the website and check these PowerPoints out because it is phenomenal. I'm going to stop saying it because I'm going to start taking away from it. But this is amazing. If you're any way interested in history or science at all, like I am, how can you not be interested in our human evolution, our human history? Go check it out. This is amazing. Michael, again, thank you very much. I'm going to try to get you out everywhere that I possibly can because you're cooking with something here. I mean, you're onto something. This is amazing.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And again, hopefully we can have you on again because if you're like me where you look at things and just go, that doesn't make sense, I've got to figure it out. I have a feeling that there's more than just this that you've got cooking in the back of your brain, and I love talking with you, and I love the way that you point things out, and I just love getting intelligent people out there because every second that people aren't listening to the Kardashians is a good second. So I got 2 kids to raise in this world. I'd rather have them focused on listening to intelligent people than watching reality TV. So
amen, brother.
Thank you very much. This is amazing. This is awesome. Keep fighting the good fight, and I am going to do everything I can to help you.
Well, thank you for all you do. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. And again, thanks to all the listeners. This has been an amazing episode. Again, this is exactly why I started doing a podcast. Thanks for hanging with us. And I feel bad that now we're going to go into some music, but we're going to go into some music, and hope you guys enjoyed it.
Open your eyes, and you will find me. Put down your disguise, and you can be free. All your twisted lies lead to agony. If you spend your time without an open mind, you might as well be blind. Heading down the road, traveling way too far. All I got in front of me are the headlights of my car. Thoughts of you like needles, they sting my weary mind. And I wonder how you've been and where you are tonight. On your shoulder, and every single night the road is getting colder. I remember the words on the letter that you sent me. You said you needed some time to find some harmony. Open your eyes and you will find me. Put down your disguise, and you can be free. All your twisted lies lead to agony. And if you spend your time without an open mind, you might as well be blind. you yesterday, swallowing my pride. You said the time was all we needed and the time was on our side. But time takes no sides and it has no sympathy. It can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. Open your eyes and you will find me. Put down your disguise and you can be free. All your twisted lies lead to agony. And if you spend your time without an open mind, you might as well be blind.
Okay, so again, that was the song Blind from Mike Amabile and Run Over Twice off their Open Your Eyes album. Again, they're the 2013 Texas Music Awards winners for artistic excellence. I love having these guys on the show. I love their music, and they're great guys as well. So hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Hope you enjoy this music, and hope you click through farfromcenter.com. Use the Amazon links to pick up some of their singles, or if you're like me and listen to their stuff on repeat all day, every day, pick up all their albums and just go ahead and throw it on your iPod or your phone or your computer or whatever it is, and just listen to them, because I just can't get enough of Mike Amabile and Run Over Twice myself. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Again, I can't say it enough. That's why I started this podcast. I have 2 kids to raise in this world, and I hope the next generation can kind of go back to prizing intelligence over, stupid fluff like we have that's kind of overtaken our society these days. So we need to get back to praising physicists and intelligent people rather than, any jackass that can hunt ducks or make a sex tape, whatever the Kardashians do. I don't know what they do besides be on television, but whatever. I want my kids to aspire to something greater. I hope you do too. So that's why I do this. That's why I try to have these great guests on there, wildly intelligent people with great ideas. And I would rather have somebody on here that challenges the common notion, the common thought, and what the common thread is, because that's what science is. Science is all theory until it's either proven or disproven. And even though it hurts the majority to see that and realize that, that's the God's honest truth. Science is never fact. Science is only theory until it's proven or disproven, and then it's either a proven theory or a law, or it would be called a law, or else you go back to the drawing board and figure out what it is. And it seems like Michael really is onto something here that might challenge the common notion and force some people to go back to the drawing board. I really think he's onto something. And I challenge everybody out there, if you don't believe it, if you think that's hogwash, find a better explanation, submit it on the farfromcenter.com website or Facebook page, or get somebody. Hey, that'd be great. Get somebody to try and disprove him. I'd like somebody to come out openly and say, I'm going to try and disprove him, so that way they're on the record for trying it rather than doing it in their mom and dad's basement, so we'll know if they're successful or not, because that's some pretty, I don't know. They're just screenshots from Google Earth, but backed up with his ideas and his theories. That's some pretty compelling stuff right there. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. As always, I am a national spokesman for USA Cares, so I would like to take a second of your time and talk about USA Cares for a second. Right now, we're going to go. I do a little bit of a couple of different things. Sometimes we have letters that are written by families. Sometimes we do case studies. I've talked to the guys from USA Cares, and they're going to let us start doing a thing. They actually have a lot of veterans that work for USA Cares, so we're going to have some of them call into the show and give their own little piece, because I really believe in this organization, and that's been my thing from the get-go. When I wrote my memoir, Love Me When I'm Gone, that was the biggest thing. I wasn't as concerned about making money off it. I wasn't as concerned about anything else. That's why I didn't go with a big publisher. I kept the story intact by self-publishing. I spent a lot of money on my own. I spent a hell of a lot of money on my own going ahead and self-publishing rather than going with one of the big publishers that wanted to basically just destroy the story. You know, a lot of those stories that are out there by military authors right now are ghostwritten, or they're, you know, basically an editor walked them through the whole process, and you lose a lot of that story when you do that. So that was my main concern with Love Me When I'm Gone. I wanted the story to get out there to kind of honor the other guys that were with me and do as much as I could to connect with other people. And thankfully, in my search to be able to do that, I found the people at USA Cares. I can't say enough good things about them. I actually am leaving tomorrow to go, and I'm doing a charity golf tournament with them. Horrible at golf. Thank you to Brother Robert Johnson again for giving us Brother Arnold Palmer for our Famous Freemason last week. Hopefully I can channel some of his energy and not just be whiffing and, you know, doing my own little rendition of Caddyshack over the next couple of days. But I think I'll be doing okay. But that's how much I believe in these guys. Like, I'm willing to do whatever. I'm an unpaid spokesman. They don't pay their spokesman. And that's one of the things. You look at some of these other charities and they spend more money on advertising and administration than they do on the actual veterans. USA Cares, you know, Jim Rollins, who's multiple New York Times best-selling author, Dennis Miller, Brian Anderson, none of us are paid. We're all unpaid spokesmen. We believe in this organization so much because we've seen them. We've hung out with them. We know the inner workings. We know so much about them. We know that it's not just a charity, it's a family. They believe in what they're doing. I, as a veteran, believe in what they're doing. And I hope that you can believe in some of what they're doing too. You can follow them at usacares.org on Twitter, or you can go to www.usacares.org. I've got links on everything I do on farfromcenter.com and on lovemewhenimgone.com. But, you know, hopefully this might help you. If hearing me talk about it doesn't quite sway you to go in and maybe lend them a hand or do whatever you can, or even just check them out, then maybe these things that I read will. So here's another case study that we have. Like I said, we do a little bit, we do different things every time because they do so many things to help people out. There's just not enough things I can say. So I'm trying to kind of mix it up a little bit so you can get a good idea of all the different things they do. So we have another case summary today, and this is from an Army veteran who was medically discharged in March 2012 and service-connected at 40% due to his disabilities gained from his career in the military. Following his military career, he was working in the field of newspaper sales and advertising until he was laid off in January 2013. He was unable to collect unemployment benefits because he was not working at the place of employment for a full year. He was the main source of income for his family of 5. The spouse is a stay-at-home mom and goes to school full-time. So good on her. Full-time mom going to school. I had the kids for the weekend. Cindy had some classes she took, and I had the kids for this weekend. We have a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old. And those two kept me full. Like I said, I'm working on my next 3 books right now, and, you know, trying to do the podcast and doing all these other things. And that had me running ragged. I can't only imagine what a mother of 5 was doing while she also had classes. So my hat's off to this woman. But she's a stay-at-home mom and goes to school full-time. The veteran did receive a new job offer at Aflac as a sales coordinator that started April 18th. So he was laid off in January. He was medically discharged in March 2012. Had a job, then was laid off of that job in January 2013, and he has a job offer for Aflac that starts April 18th. So USA Cares assisted the veteran with his car payments to secure his mode of transportation until he receives his first paycheck. And that really goes into kind of what we talk about with USA Cares, how they're the first responders. And that's a big thing, and we've talked about it on previous episodes. You have some veterans out there who, you know, the VA has given them, you know, we've talked before about a guy that the VA gave him an 80% disability. And that's quite a bit. That means, you know, they'll be giving them, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a month or so. But the thing about the VA is that might take 6 months to 6 years. Anybody that's had any experience with the government in any way, shape, or form, not just the VA, but anything with the government, knows that there is nothing fast, nothing efficient, nothing quick about them. So even though these guys, you get blown up by an IED, you're a double amputee or a triple amputee or whatever has gone on with you, you got serious TBI, PTSD, shrapnel throughout your body, whatever's going on, the government might say, oh yeah, definitely, we're going to help you out. We're going to give you a 90% rating in 5 years, so you're medically discharged from the Army. So we're kicking out of the Army. Thank you very much for serving your country. Goodbye. The VA is going to give you a rating, but there's going to be a huge window of who knows, 6 months to 5 years between there. The most recent estimates I've seen says the VA has 1 million claim backlog. That's 1 million people who are in queue right now waiting for their benefits to kick in. So that's where great organizations like USA Cares come in. We're not saying that the VA isn't doing whatever they can do to help. They're wildly inefficient. They're part of the government. That is part of our government, is being wildly inefficient. So, please ask yourself, next time they say they want to raise taxes rather than fix themselves and fix their own culture of spending, ask yourself, how efficient do you think they are, and do you really think more money is the answer? But that's where these great organizations like USA Cares come in. So the VA is going to help at some point, but in that interim period, anywhere between a day, a month, a year, 10 years, organizations like USA Cares are there for a Band-Aid. They're there to help. They give what we call financial grants. They're not loans. It's not a loan that the veteran's getting sacked with interest. You go to a lot of these payday loan cashing places that are littered all around bases that charge 300-400% interest. Yeah, that's real. They really do that. And it's nothing but locusts on these veterans that are in financial straits. Well, that's what USA Cares does. They don't charge any interest. It's not a loan. It's a grant. They're there to help. They are the first responders to help these veterans and soldiers that are in need when they need the money. They have and I hate this term literally, but they have literally called while the cars are up on the tow trucks waiting to be repossessed. They've called, USA Cares has called with a credit card number and got those cars down. They've kept the lights on. They've kept the food on the table. They've kept the family running while the soldier was overseas or the veteran was at home looking for a new job, doing everything that he could to keep his family together. I love these guys. I can't say enough good things about these guys, and I hope if you're listening to this podcast and you care at all about anything that I say, you'll at least check these guys out, because it doesn't take more than a couple seconds to realize they're the real deal, and they're doing some good. So my hat's off to them, and my hat's off to any of you that will take that extra step and do whatever you can do to help them out. So again, I want to say thanks to everybody for listening. Please tell a friend. Our numbers, I'm checking our numbers right now. They're going through the roof. Every episode is growing exponentially, and I can't do anything but thank all of you for that. The word is spreading, and it's not, I'm doing the same thing. Obviously, you guys are taking up the word and spreading it to all your friends. And again, I can't say enough thanks you, man. Thank yous. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm sitting here with a mic, and I'm glad that you guys like what it is that I'm putting out there. Again, farfromcenter.com, farfromcenter podcast Facebook page. Go to any one of those. Leave me comments. If there's a guest that you want to hear about, if there's a topic you want to hear about, if you think I just talk too damn much and I need to let the guests go, if you like, certain songs by Mike Amabile and Run Over Twice, if there's any part of this that you like, let me know, because I'm really looking for feedback. I really would like to know what it is that you guys like the best, what you don't like the best, and what it is. I want to make this the best experience for everybody as possible, because my ultimate goal is to get as much knowledge and information out there as I can. And the only way I can do that is to get the largest audience that I can, get all of you guys interested, get your friends interested, and that way we can put out interesting, intelligent, great information to help enlighten our public, our audience, our country, our world, and help it be a world of intelligent, educated people who might not be getting everything they want to get from the mainstream media, newspapers, the news, whatever. So That's my goal. You guys know that's what I'm trying to do in a nutshell. So, again, thank you for listening. Thank you for telling a friend. Thank you for doing all that you can to click through the farfromcenter.com website, supporting the show, going through the Audible banner and getting your free audiobooks and getting Love Me When I'm Gone, my memoir about my time in Special Forces, which I narrated, and Mike too many mics. Mike Dawson did all the audio engineering for. Thanks for going and getting some on it. I had a long conversation with Dawson. He said how much he loved On It, man. It's music to my ears because I've been taking this stuff for a long time. When it wasn't, not too many people knew about it. It makes me feel great every time I turn somebody else on to Alpha Brain and New Mood and Hemp Force Protein, and they tell me how much it's changed their lives. It really does. I can't say enough. You want to be a full spectrum human being. It really does. It makes you, Alpha Brain makes your brain operate at a potential that I never knew I had. And this is from a guy who's cerebral. Like I'm stuck in my brain all day long. I can't stop having ideas. I walk around with Post-it notes and constantly put stuff in my phone, in my little notification things. And I email myself all day because I have so many ideas. New Moon, I hadn't been able to sleep. If you're into like lucid dreaming, or you just want relaxing sleep, or you're a guy or girl that's had to take Tylenol PM or Benadryl or any of this crap that's bad for your body. And if you ever want to nerd out and get into the whole, medical ideology and the anatomy and physiology and the pharmacology of why that Benadryl and all that other stuff is bad for you, hit me up on the Facebook page or on the website, because that stuff is not good for you. What it does to your parasympathetic nervous system is not good. New Mood, however, is great. It's all natural. Chamomile, you heard your grandma telling you to just drink some chamomile tea. Well, that's what it has. It has chamomile extract. It's got a lot of other stuff, just like Alpha Brain. It's got the nootropics in there, and it really is. In 5 years, it's the first thing that's ever made me feel great, have restful sleep, and I wake up feeling like $1 million. Can't wait to get to the gym and knock it out. And it's great. Again, go on it. Use that checkout code RPL. Get 10% off. Again, they got 100% money back guarantee. You don't like it, keep the product, call them up. They'll give you your money back. So there's nothing to lose there. Use RPL. Get 10% off. If you don't like it, get your money back. What are you waiting for? What do you got to lose? Make yourself the best human being you can possibly be. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the world. You have to be the best person you can possibly be. And again, Amazon, you can click through the links. You can go and buy my memoir, Love Me When I'm Gone, about my time as a Green Beret. And again, every time you buy that book, I send a little bit of love to some various veterans charities like USA Cares and do everything that I can. So if you're the type of person that would like to donate to veterans charities, buy the book. And you'll be doing that, and you'll get a new book. So it's a great little twofer there. So, as always, I'd like to say thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me. Next week's episode is a bit of a doozy. We got a hell of a one coming up, and I'm glad you guys are going to be happy. You're not going to be disappointed. This is going to be a good one. So, for the end of this, as always, I'd like to ask, if you have a drink in your hand, please raise it and join me in saying Berg Heil, De Oppresso Liber, and most importantly, God bless America.
Said you don't need money, you don't need fame, don't need people to know your name.